How's it going, everybody? I'm here with Mark Lumpkin from STR Cribs. We have no idea what we're going to talk about today, but we're just going to have a conversation, get to know each other a little bit more. We're probably going to cover some Airbnb stuff, but let's get into it. Mark, how you doing?
Cool. Yeah, John, I'm super excited to be here, man. I always love talking with you. Me and you could talk for hours and hours.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, I'm stoked to see where this today leads us, and
Yeah.
maybe we can provide some value to whoever's listening.
Yeah, like I said before we got started, I have nothing prepared. This is not just like one of these podcasts where you hop on and ask a whole bunch of questions with the exact same thing you probably answered 20 times. I think people just want to get to know you, right? So I want people to get to know Mark. I am a huge fan, right? I mean, we've known each other for a little bit, and ever since I got to know you, I'm like, man, this is like a guy I want to hang out with for the rest of my life. So
Yeah,
um, obviously, you're with STR Cribs, and there's probably some people wondering what STR Cribs is. So why don't you just talk about it a little bit, and then we can actually talk about amenities. I have been thinking about this. I'm curious what your takes are. So
cool.
tell everyone about STR Cribs for a second.
Yeah, man. So STR Cribs, if you haven't heard this before, we're a design and renovation firm that focuses specifically on short-term rentals and really doing those amazing properties that you always talk about, John, at STR
Yeah,
Search,
yeah,
which is those high driving ROI, high revenue properties that when you're scrolling through Airbnb or VRBO, like it's one of our properties
yeah,
because it rips off the screen and it looks so much different than everyone else. And I
yeah.
think that we do a really good job at that. And you and me are writing a book together right now called The
Yep,
Amenities Arms Race,
yep.
and that's basically all that we're talking about is like
Amenities,
what
amenities,
used to
amenities.
the
Right,
amenities, 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 and design, and
right.
guest experience, and
So what did
like
okay? Just sorry to jump in real quick, but you just hit on like three things that I could spend all day talking about, right? Because what a lot of people don't know about me is that what with TechFester, one of the main things that I had to do was obviously find the best market, find the best property, and then figure out if the property we were going to get was actually going to make money, which is all focused on prior to actually getting the property itself. But I actually took on another section that I did behind the scenes. I almost never talk about. I don't even think you know this, but I used to do the briefs for almost every single property that we got after I was with TechFester for like 6 months or so. So what I mean by like a brief, and you know these, but I'll explain for everybody else, is you take a look at a property and you figure out what does it need, what amenities does it need, and why, what is the customer demographic and why, and then what is the flow of the property. So how should it all be laid out, to the point where when I would create these briefs, I would go, we need to have the pool table on this side of the game room and make sure that there's enough room to be able to have this over on the other side of that game room, so that there's this better flow between one angle and the other angle. And when people kind of come into the room, it feels like it's very cohesive and they can sit down on the couch while they're watching the people play pool. And behind the pool table has like this sort of design to it and maybe these sort of colors, so that when we get that photo, it angles and hits it the right way, right? And I would kind of break down every single different area in the property like that as much as I possibly could. And then I would take that and hand it off to the design team, which is obviously STR Cribs. And then you guys would take that and use it as sort of like a guide to figure out really, like, I don't want to take too much credit here because I would hand it to you guys as a guide, but then you guys would always take it and like 10x what I was thinking, or bring it together in a way that made even more comprehensive sense, right? But what I always loved was that I got to bring my data to like the amenities side, so I could, right? You know what I mean?
your vision. You brought your vision, so you said, "Hey guys, this is the things that it needs to have. This is the
Right.
guest experience we need to create. This is how I'm thinking about doing it." And yeah, you do a great job of putting yourself in the guest shoes and also in the house. And like every home is so unique, right? Every layout is so different, even down to the room size. Like, hey, is
Right.
this
Yeah.
room 10 by 20 or is it 20 by or is it 20 by 15? Because those measurements change how you can lay out the room and what amenities you can have in that room, because some might not fit, or you might feel like you just you just filled up a room full of stuff and that doesn't go over well. That doesn't create a good experience. And so yeah, you definitely do a great job of providing that vision and some inspiration. And then we kind of come behind and make it reality and add our little spin to it.
Yeah, exactly. Which I always say you guys take my vision and kind of like 10x it, and it just looks so much better. But um, before you're with Cribs, you were with Showplace, right?
Yep.
And then what were you doing prior to that? Like, how did you? So I'm actually this is stuff we haven't talked about before, but I'm curious. How did you get into the Airbnb space in a sense, right? Without going through like every single last little detail. But I am curious because if you are in the space, you've got to be interested in the space, and then you kind of ended up here somehow, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it's kind of like anybody that gets into anything, and just like you, we just kind of seem to fall into it, and it's like a series of
Okay.
events, and you look back and you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is where I ended up on this journey. But I think that my kind of love for travel started in my earlier 20s. Me and my
Yeah.
wife had done kind of some world tours I've told you about, and we traveled all over the world and all over the
Yeah.
country.
I
And so
wanted to
that
ask
was
you more
super
about
fun.
that. I wanted to ask you more
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that actually. So I'm very jealous because I always wanted to be able to travel for like a very long time. Like I had in my head where it's like I wanted to travel for like years, right? And figure out a way to do that. And honestly, for a long time, I was just trying to be able to figure out how I could save up enough money or do some things where I could then take all that and just go travel, like to the point where I was like reading books to try and figure it out. And
yeah.
then you and I were sitting in a casino down in Scottsdale, and you're like, "Yeah, me and my girlfriend, we travel. Me and my wife we traveled for like ever." I'm like, "What?" So tell me about it. Like, where'd you go? How long did you guys go for? I want to like get into the nitty gritty detail of that.
Well, you're a world traveler too, so don't sell yourself short. I've seen some photos. You've been to some pretty cool places, but
Yeah, I'm not done traveling. I'll say that much. So I definitely
dude,
got a lot
there's
of travel left.
so much to see, so little time. So how it started actually. So me and my wife were dating at the time, and I had a house about 2 hours away from her. She had a house out at the Oregon coast, and I had a house in the valley. And we were doing a lot of traveling back and forth.
Mm,
And things start to get serious,
yeah.
and you're like, okay, this me driving 2 hours every weekend one way and 2 hours back on, late on Sunday night to be at work on Monday. This sucks. And
By the way, same scenario. 2 hour drive distance between me and my girlfriend, and it was just constantly every single weekend back and forth.
yeah,
Same
man, it
idea.
sucks,
Yeah, it does
right?
suck after a while, without a
It
doubt.
definitely sucks. It's fun at the beginning, and then you're like, all right, this is too far.
Something needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she put her house up for sale, and I put up my house for sale, and it's kind of like, let's just see what happens. And both of our houses went under contract, and we were like, okay, well, what should we do? And one of us was like, oh, let's go travel to Europe and let's go spend like a month. And I remember really well. We were actually hiking. We were hiking up a mountain, and we got to the top. We were sitting there talking, and I was like, "Gosh, if we're gonna go all the way to Europe for a month, let's just go for 3 months." And then she was like, "You know what? Fuck it. Let's just quit our jobs and go for like a year or two, because we have no debt, we have no
Right.
kids. Like, I mean, we just both sold our houses. We had some
Like,
equity in them. We got a little
yeah,
money in the bank, and so we're
yeah,
feeling high on ourselves."
yeah.
And I
We
was
just
like, "All
climbed
right."
a mountain as well, by the way. So it's
And we
like,
we just we're on top of a mountain
yeah,
looking over this beautiful valley, and so we've got some inspiration, and we did it. So she put in her notice at work, I put in my notice with my company, and
you
I
just went
think
from
it
there.
took us 60 days to tie up our loose ends. We sold most of our stuff. We got a small little storage unit, a little 10 by 10,
Nice.
threw in the stuff that we couldn't get rid of,
Yeah,
or like memorabilia, clothes, things like that.
yeah.
And we found a home for her dog for a while. We started in Europe. We bought
Hold on, before
the
you go too deep into where you all went, I just want to tell something real quick. That's a as you're explaining this story about how you're like on top of a mountain and made the decision. I got such a similar story. It's not even funny. Like, so
let's hear it.
so COVID hits, right? And
Right.
everything goes to shit. End up selling off my business, and I'm kind of in the process of it and whatnot. And you just have a ton of free time because I went from like having a whackload to do to having nothing to do. And
Yep.
and so me, my best friend, his girlfriend, his girlfriend's friend, we all hop into my car, and we drove from Chicago down to Scottsdale. And we're like, we're just gonna hang out in Scottsdale for like 2 weeks. Mind you, Airbnb's not getting booked, so like we just hung out at my Airbnb at the time, right?
Right.
And while we were there, we made it like a little tour. So we went Scottsdale, Sedona. We kind of like went to the edge of Utah. We went all these different little places, and we went to Horseshoe Bend, right? And we're sitting at the top of Horseshoe Bend, looking out And I kind of just like walked away from everybody for a minute and just had one of those moments where when you're looking at it, it's so unbelievably beautiful. And it's one of these areas where pictures could never ever do it justice. I've seen hundreds of pictures of the horseshoe bend, and not one of them have I ever looked at it and been like, that's a realistic, you know, projection of horseshoe bend. Because when you get there, it's so much bigger, it's so much more beautiful, and it just kind of takes you away, right? And
Yep.
so I'm standing there and I'm just looking at it, and like I've had this in the back of my head for a while where like I wanted to go travel, but I hadn't committed to it. And I'm just sitting there and over again thinking to myself, like, what's gonna happen? And in that moment, I made the decision. I'm like, I'm going to just chase more of these moments of things that pictures cannot do it justice.
Yep.
So places where like, because you can go and look at a beautiful photo of wherever and feel like you're seeing it or whatnot, but you know when you actually get there and you're in it, it's so different and it's such an awesome feeling. So in that moment, on top of this hill, you know what I mean, or whatever, looking down, right? I made the decision that I was going to go travel and like ended up making it happen, you know, a month later or so. So like literally same idea. Something about being up high, looking down and and brainstorming will lead to a lot of travel, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely inspires you, I think. And we live in such a digital world that it feels like we live our lives
Yeah.
so much through our phone and through our computer that when you get those authentic, real experiences, and
Yep.
I mean, they call it being grounded, right? And being in nature is one of the best things that you could possibly do for your
Ever.
mental and physical health,
Yep.
and even for your inspiration, right? Like you're gonna be a better business person, better parent, better father, better friend, just by going out
Yeah.
and having that time to think and reflect and to get inspired, to
Yep.
come up with new ideas. And so,
You know,
yeah,
sorry, real quick. You said something, by the way, the last time we were together, where I go, "Are you on Instagram? Do you use Instagram?" And you're like, "No, that shit is garbage for your brain," or something along those lines. Where you're like,
yeah,
you were just so quick. You're like, "No, that's toxic to your brain," or something along those lines. And I genuinely, that's the trigger I now use in my head to get me to sign off on
yeah,
Instagram and stuff like that. I think of you saying that to me, and I get off of it. And now you
mm,
saying about how like, you know, you being out in nature or just being surrounded by stuff that re-energizes us, right? Makes us a better person. And I strongly believe that the more energy you have on a day-to-day basis, the better your life is.
definitely,
If you sleep like 6 hours and you're a person who absolutely needs 8 hours, that day is so fucking hard, right?
yep,
But
yep,
if you get that full 8 and maybe you worked out and ate right, the
yep,
day's easy. It's very
yep,
easy, right? And so the more energy you have, the easier your life is. And so like even for yourself, just saying the more you're out in nature, the better person you are. It's because you have better energy, you're more connected, you're more calm, you have more clarity. I strongly believe in all of that.
definitely. And if you go through seasons in life that where you can look back and reflect, you're kind of like recharging your batteries, right?
Yes.
You're like right now you're in the grind of building your business and you got a new baby here and you're doing all that
Yeah.
stuff. But it's because you've had those experiences in the past where you've kind of recharged your batteries and you'll go through it and then you'll in a year or two you'll be like, all right, honey, we got to go do an adventure. We got to go do something to
Yeah.
kind of
Re-energize.
revigorate us and get us
Yeah.
excited about life again because it's just seasons. It's just the ups and the flow, the downs,
Season
and
the season of the life that you were in the moment, right?
definitely,
And that's you know what's interesting, and I was actually thinking about it, talking to you about this because you are a guy who's done a lot of travel. You are a guy with 2 kids. You know you have a great career and everything that you're doing, and I feel like you're in the season ahead of me, right? And because right now what I've actually noticed is I could care less to travel to Europe and go see anything or anywhere. Like I genuinely could care less because all I care about right now is growing my business and taking care of my baby and my girlfriend and everything that we have here, right? And continuing to build on that. And the idea of going to walk around somewhere in Europe just is not, it just doesn't excite me. Like even the idea of like going to climb a mountain, it doesn't excite me, which it used to my entire life. I would get so excited about the idea of climbing a mountain, right? And so I'm curious, like you've gone through this. Did you feel at a point in time where you just could care less to do that? And did it change for you?
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting that you said that you think I'm in a season ahead of you, because I think you're in a season ahead of me, right?
Oh
That's
yeah.
always like that. It's always that perspective. Like you always think that
Right.
that someone else is doing better than you, or is living a better life, or has more, is more successful, or
Grass
has
is
more
always greener.
followers. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I would say I'm in a different season than you because I no longer have very small kids. I have a 3-year-old and almost a 5-year-old. And so I've gotten out of what me and my wife call the trenches, right? And
Mm,
it's the diapers, it's the bottles, it's the car seats, it's the
yeah.
like right now I can grab my kids and 2 bars and a bottle of water and we can go out and have a kick-ass fun day, right? But 2 years ago, that was impossible. It was like, all right, we need the bottles and the bottle warmers and the diaper bags and the changing extra pair of clothes, this and this and
Right.
this. And we've got an hour and 42 minutes until nap time. So what can we squeeze in the next hour and 40 minutes? And it's like
Right.
life with little kids is, especially when you're traveling, is very hard. And
Right.
so what I think we did a good job of, and you obviously have just said that you're doing that as well, is you kind of recognize where you're at and you go, okay, those things are not going to happen right now. And so what can we do in this moment? Well, you know what? We're going to make macaroni and cheese and we're going to watch SpongeBob on TV and have a fun kick-ass night together, or play hide and seek, or paint or whatever. You're like, it's just different. And so you just have to embrace that different place that you're at and not think about where you could be, where you have been, where you will be, and just live in the present moment.
That's
And
that's beautiful.
it's hard to do, man. It's even more hard to do with Instagram and social media, because the moment you open it, it's,
Yeah.
oh, I know this guy and he's on a beautiful beach in Thailand drinking coconut water and
Right. Right.
and mais, and I'm here with throw up on my shirt, poop on my hands. I
Yeah.
haven't slept in 2 days, and my wife is screaming at me because she hasn't slept in 3 days. Like, it's just,
Right.
that's why I told you that Instagram is toxic, because it shows you worlds that you're not living in, and you always think the grass is greener on the other side, and
That's
that's the
so, I agree with everything that you just said there, but with that being said, one thing that I have noticed is that I'm so happy and content with just sitting there with Remy. You know what I mean? Just sitting there, like laying on the ground, sitting with her, watching her try and roll over. And it's like that's all I want to be doing in this moment. Nothing else whatsoever. I don't care. It's fine. And it's such a beautiful thing, because like there's one thing that I very rarely am, which is content. I'm almost never content. So whenever I feel that feeling of content in my life, like I'm happy in this moment with the way things are, I try to recognize that and hold on to it in a way. You know what I mean? Which is, anyways, we could go into
because it comes and goes, and it goes quicker
right.
than you could ever hang on to. So you got to hang on to that moment and that
Yeah.
feeling of being content and just enjoy the hell out of it.
Yes.
Because you
Exactly.
might be singing a different tune in 6 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then when that happens, you just kind of figure it out from there and kind of move forward, right?
Definitely. And if
But
you have that mindset of, I'm just gonna appreciate and enjoy what I have and keep trudging forward, like life. Hopefully, you live into your 80s or 90s, and me too, and you have a lot of life to live, but it
right.
goes quick. So
It really does. What I've noticed by having Remy, and I'm curious what your perspective on this is, that when you have a child, you can actually see how quick life goes, because you're watching them grow and it feels like yesterday you left the hospital, but all of a sudden it's been 4 months.
yeah,
And you can see this thing physically growing day by day. You see your baby growing day by day, and it just makes you understand how quick life really is, and then you have to learn to appreciate it even more, right? And be grateful of these like times you have. There's so many times I can't even tell you, where I sit down with Remy and I just think to myself, I can't wait till you're 2 and we can run around and like kind of talk a little bit. But then I go, hold on, enjoy this moment right now where she's just like this little doll. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know. It's a beautiful thing, man. It
yeah,
really is.
it is, and you only get little kids for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And so then they're not little kids anymore; they're big kids. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me the most powerful thing was, I saw someone say, like, you only get 18 summers with your kids before they're gone, and you're like,
Right.
18 summers? That's not very long, man. That goes by quick.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, you're doing a good job appreciating it. I've not always done an amazing job appreciating it. I think that it's kind of one of those things that sometimes I've really appreciated. Other times it's felt like something that's holding me back from doing other things.
Mm.
But
I'm sure
it's
when you're
it's
I'm sure when you're 80 and you got grandkids running around you, you'll be like, this was a better decision than going on another Europe trip, you know? Like,
oh, I think that it's the only regret you'll ever have at the end of your life is not having more kids and not having or having a larger family. I
man,
don't think you'd regret anything. And I tell you this, I have the greatest example. We're traveling with the family. We were in Savannah, Georgia, and I have to Google it, but there's this really famous cemetery in Savannah, Georgia, and it is like it takes you an hour to drive through it. It's massive. It's just like
geez.
people have statues built of themselves. You've got Rockefellers buried out there. You've got,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, Civil War generals buried. Like it's just a unbelievable amount of history in this
Okay.
cemetery, right? And
Yep.
people have built themselves little crypts that are like stone houses that have stained glass and pillars and all this stuff. It's crazy. But what's so interesting is when we were driving through and we're looking, and I'm looking at all the headstones. It doesn't matter if it's a $500 headstone or something that costs somebody $500,000. They're all engraved, right? And you
Yep.
know what all the engravings say? Beloved friend, father, wife, husband, sister, brother. That's it.
That's it.
No one engraved on their headstone
Wow.
multimillionaire,
Yeah.
entrepreneur, business owner, world traveler, the
Right.
most fit guy at the, you know what I mean? No one remembers people for that. No one wants to be remembered for that when they die. All they want to be remembered for is beloved friend, father, husband,
Okay.
brother, sister.
So first off, that is an unbelievable takeaway from a cemetery, right? Because I'm always trying to get advice from the elderly in some sort of way. The whole saying is you're gonna learn from other people's mistakes, which makes a ton of sense, right? Um, but what you just said there, where everybody has that written on their tombstones, is something that lines up with what I've been thinking about, and I almost need to just run this by you. I need like your take, your understanding of this because I can't wrap my head around it. So what I realized once Remy was born was that quite literally almost nothing else matters in life to an extent. Now let me explain that because I know other things matter.
I
You know
know
what I
where
mean?
you're
Like
going with this.
the
I know
work
where
you
you're
do,
going.
right? So the work you do definitely matters because the work you do puts food on the table. You know, people who protect other people, like that kind of stuff matters. And I've been thinking about this for 4 months, so not a crazy amount of time, but I have been thinking about it. But what I mean by that is that like all I care about is ensuring that Remy and Nicole are taken care of, right?
Right.
And every action that I take is to do that. And now, what's interesting is that before Remy was even born, there was a huge part of me that was trying, like, hoping that I could be a good provider, that someone would see that, and that we would be able to, fall for each other and then want to create a family together. And so, in other words, my entire life and all my actions have been leading to creating life. And now that I've created life, I know how all I want to do is make sure that that's taken care of more than anything else and create, more life, I guess you could say. But I guess what I'm trying to point out here is that I've realized that almost everything else that I've ever done, and by almost I mean everything else, literally does not matter other than this one thing. And everything is meant to lead to this one thing. And then every human being on earth is almost in that exact same cycle or in that exact same moment. So like as a human, our incentive and like our drive that we have in underlying us at all times is to procreate. And when you procreate, it's the most amazing thing in the world. And it's almost like what we're meant to do, right? But then nothing else matters. Like you were just saying, like he was the strongest guy in the world. It's like no one gives a shit. Right? No
Yep.
one's putting that on their tombstone. So I
It's
haven't really. It's almost like after having a kid, I realized that that was the only thing that mattered, and
but
all of the things I thought mattered don't matter.
yeah, what's interesting is I think that that's the difference between your biology and the society that we were raised in, right? Um,
That is
it's
that that is. See, this is
we
why I wanted to ask you that question.
Yeah,
That's
we
a great
live,
insight.
you're in Canada, I'm in the United States, very similar societies, very similar media structures, things like that.
Right.
And this is not to go down some conspiracy theory rabbit hole, but we have been programmed,
Yep.
all of us, young men, young women,
Yeah.
that you go to work, you get a career, you save up money, you buy a house, you become financially, retire, then you go live your golden years and travel and da 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 da. That's the blueprint, the messaging that has been put in front of us since day one, whether we're in
Right.
school being taught it, whether we watch the television, that doesn't matter, right? But that is not the same message that's being pushed in other societies or in other cultures around the world, right?
Yep.
And so when people even in the United States are surveyed, do you know who the happiest demographic of people is in the United States?
No. Who?
It's Hispanic Americans. Okay, they
Okay.
have the lowest wage. They have on average the lowest wages and the lowest quality of jobs. And by what I mean by that is they work blue collar jobs that are hard laborious jobs.
Okay.
So by our definition of a society, why are they the happiest people? Well, it's because
Right.
they have huge families. They live in multi-generational households, which means
Yep.
grandma and grandpa live with mom and dad, live with the kids.
Yep.
I have Hispanic friends, dude. I'm always getting invited to parties. Every other weekend, it's like, hey, it's someone's
Yeah.
birthday. Hey, we're getting together just for the hell of it. And you show up, dude, and everyone brings food. They have a blast. They know each other. They're listening to music. They're hugging. They're kissing. Their kids are playing together, dude. It's
Yep.
because they have a community that's based around the family structure. And quite frankly, white Americans don't do that. We live in individual houses. We see mom and dad for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and that's it. And we're the most unhappy. So
That's.
maybe
I
we're
mean,
doing something wrong.
that's a beautiful insight. I've got quite a few things I want to say on that. Because I couldn't agree more. When I was growing up, I grew up in a hometown that I absolutely hated, and I always wanted to move away. And then I eventually did move away, and I was far enough away where there was a bit of a distance, and I always longed for my family, right? Friends and family, always. But I never could see myself living where I grew up. And so I eventually have this beautiful compromise where I met somebody who lives in this beautiful vacation town that's pretty close to where I grew up. And so I get to live in this beautiful place that's really close to all my family. And my life has improved just by being closer to them, right? That's sort of like one thing I want to say there. The other thing is that one of my favorite people is one of my old employees from Chicago. And she's even coming to visit in like a couple weeks. And she's Mexican and her family's Mexican. And I went to her mom's wedding in her backyard, and it was one of the most fun weddings that I've ever been a part of. And like, she is always genuinely happy. I agree with you on all those things. But I had one other thing I wanted to say there, and it's slipped my mind. But this whole idea of, oh, sorry, I have it. The last one, which is we're all programmed, right, to
Yep.
based on the community that we grew up in. And I grew up as a Catholic, and my mom and dad are like very hardcore Catholics. And I remember thinking about the stat that the majority of Muslims are in the Middle East and the majority of Catholics are over here. And I thought to myself as like a young boy, and I was like, if I grew up over there, I'd be Muslim,
Right.
right? I'd be
Right.
like, so then therefore
You're a
I'm only
product of your environment.
Catholic.
You're a product of your environment.
Right. So I'm like, I'm only
We all
Catholic
are.
because of that.
Yeah.
And then that just screwed everything up for me when it came to religion, because it's like, well, I'm only following this one because I didn't grow up over there and I wasn't taught that one. But if I was taught that one, I would be that one. And we can get into religion. That's a whole other conversation. But this idea of like programming is we're programmed by the community or the surroundings. I could not agree more with. And it is actually really sad that people don't focus on families as much as they do, because family is everything. I mean, I'm a sixth child, right? So I've got 4 brothers and 4 sisters. So
It's awesome,
I
dude.
believe in family more than anything. And when people tell me they're like, I only want 2 kids, I'm like, you're missing out. Like, you don't know it, but you're missing out. And so
You're missing out. You should have 100.
you should have as many as you can. Just keep
As
going.
many as you can. Yep. So and this all ties back to the to what we talked about at the beginning, which is traveling and seeing the world. And there's a famous Moorish. I think it's what's the guy's name? His name is Moorish, and it is he who does not travel does not know the value of men. And if you don't get outside of your space and your sphere and where you grew up and where you were programmed to see the way people live in other parts of the world,
Right.
it's hard for you to know what else is out there and what will actually genuinely make you happy.
Yeah.
And so like I mean, just things that I do in my day-to-day life after traveling is quite different. I mean, quite
It's
frankly, is like
all perspective.
it's
It's
all perspective.
travel gives you perspective of what life could be like, right? If you
Yep.
didn't live in this spot, and that perspective is worth everything in life. Like I even think that like Remy, my daughter, like I want her to go to school overseas for whatever, or at least do some sort of travel, like just get out of here at one point or another and go and see how other people live. So funny you bring this up, man, because I feel like I'm just recalling so many of these things as you're saying. But we were going for a walk yesterday with Nicole, and I just where I live, there's a lot of greenery. There's a lot of greenery. It's a very small town, under 2,000 people. I love the greenery. I love the outside. It's beautiful, and it's a direct opposite of where I grew up, right? And
Yep.
so I'm walking around, and I told her, I'm like, I wonder how long it will take for me to no longer look up at how beautifully green where I live is and not feel grateful. Because right now it's been almost 2 years that I've been living here, and I can still just look around. Like even if I get to the end of my street and walk out, there's no curbs on
Yep.
on my street, right? And it's like it just grass right to the street, and that even that feels like more open and free and not so constrained. And I'm grateful, like literally every single time I'm grateful because I have the perspective of what it's like to not be in that scenario. And so yeah, I
Definitely.
couldn't agree with you more. Travel is just it's everything, right?
Definitely. Yeah, it's gonna open you up to figuring out what type of life you want to live, and then you
Right.
can be strategic and you can start to implement it. And that's hard to see when you're a young person,
For sure.
especially in the societies that we grew up in, because you're so programmed to be two things: to be a worker and to be a consumer. And
Sure.
work is not a bad thing. Like you
Not
know
at all.
me,
Not even a
I'm a
little bit.
hard worker. You are too. When we get in, we roll up our sleeves and we get after it.
I'm sure.
But it needs to be intentional, and it's not the only thing. And it's the
Yeah.
reason that you go to work is so that you can provide for your family and live a
Right.
good quality life, and then build something that you can be proud of. There's a lot of benefits to working. And like, I don't know if you want to go down this rabbit hole, but my
Let's go.
buddy, let's do it. Let's go down a rabbit hole here. We could circle back to traveling because we obviously don't want to leave that off the table. But you've got this revolution we live in, which is the AI and the robots, and it's real. I mean, I've got a friend that works for Tesla, and you've seen the Optimus bot that Tesla's working on that is
Yep.
running the factory. And Elon says, hey, by the end of 2025, in a year and a half, this entire factory will be run by these humanoid robots, these Optimus robots, right?
Wow.
So they're going
Okay,
to
but
run
not just that.
manufacturing for us. You already have the technology is already there for driving, right? Driving in America, being a driver, whether it's Uber, truck driver, food delivery, doesn't matter. That's the largest subsect of jobs in the United States. More
Yeah.
people are employed as drivers than anything else. Well,
20%. I think it is.
20%.
Something
Let's be
crazy like
honest,
that. Yeah.
you're not going to have those jobs. They're going to be gone
Yeah.
because unless the government steps in and puts in legislation that stops it. But Elon's already taken pre-orders for the cyber taxi, the car that drives itself, right?
Yep. Yep.
And there are the semi-truck technologies there. They drive themselves. And so when I think about the future and there not being jobs because the robots can do it better and more efficient, it actually kind of frightens me a little bit because I think that humans need something to get you up in the morning and struggle and work because it gives you purpose. And so that's what everyone
Which
says, oh, the robots will do everything. I say, no, 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 we don't want that. We need jobs. We need to go do something and produce something of value to the
yeah.
world for our souls. And if that's
Cannot
gone, it's scary.
cannot agree more. So I cannot agree more with the fact that humans need work. If you were not working a job, you would be working on the farm or you would be a hunter and gatherer. And that's the
Yep,
same idea as work because we work to have an ability to eat, right? That
yep,
is it.
yep,
Anything above that is like, oh, it's nice, it's leisure, right?
yep,
But that's why we're getting up every day is so that we can have roof over our head and we can have food in our belly. And
yep,
again, if we didn't have all that, we'd be hunter gatherer, and that's a different form of work. So without a doubt, couldn't agree. Work is needed. I love work. Try to find work that you actually love.
yep,
Now, what you just said about the whole idea of the jobs going away, because I did look into this a little bit and I like deep dived this back in the day because I was super intrigued by it. I don't think it's going to be an issue. There will be a moment of discomfort, but then it will find its own footing. So, what I mean by that is if you look back at the evolution of most jobs, a ton of jobs have been replaced by technology, right? An example from a book that I love is that people used to hold lanterns on railroads to let the trains know if they should go or not or which way to go. People used to do that. They used to stand there and be a light post, right? And then they came out with the ability of a switchboard, and they could have like a green and red light, and that would allow for the train to be able to know where to go. So then all of a sudden that person doesn't have a job. So what does he do, right? And then you can even look at factories, because I grew up in a factory town. Factories used to have way more people working in them, significantly more. Factories have been wiping out jobs for a very long time, right? And yet people go out and they're able to find work, right? And what I believe happens is that now, I'm not by any means credible to be able to talk about this, but we find other ways of using our brains to create more innovative things that allow us to continue to propel forward as a society, right? And that's just the reality of it. And I can keep on giving more and more examples, but there have been millions upon millions of jobs that have been wiped out. Yeah.
Yep, I got you. And I'm gonna just this is probably the one thing that we'll maybe disagree on in this
All
one.
right, let's hear it.
is my pushback on that is yes. Historically, the tractor comes out and everyone says, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna lose all these farming jobs." Those guys do lose their jobs temporarily. They get retrained, and then someone realizes, oh shit, someone's got to drive the tractor, someone's got to make the tractor, someone's got to fix the tractor, someone's got to sell the tractor, someone's got to da 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 da.
Right.
It creates another subsect of jobs. This is different because the robots will do that new subsect of jobs. The robots will repair themselves. The robots, the AI can write the code for the new program to teach the robot to do a different job. I think this is drastically different than anything we've ever seen in human society, in human history. And it's just on another level. And so we'd say, hey.
How long would it take for everything to be transferred? Because I think that's where we get the time to correct. Now, I agree with you that it's going to be way more. I don't think it's going to be everything. And then there's a huge time for change, right? So think about all the cars that we have on the road right now. Like an unbelievable amount of cars that exist on the road. None of them are self-driving. All of those cars would have to disappear. And every single car that's being built right now in the past 5 years is good for the next 20 years minimum-ish, right? So and therefore...
It's about 12 years. The average car's on the road about 12 years.
Okay, 12 years. So then therefore, that's a 12-year period before all these cars become useless. And people have invested in all those cars, and they're not just going to get rid of them. And on top of that, they're all gas-powered cars, and that's a whole other scenario that we could go down maybe another day. But you know what I mean? Like, that's...
Yeah.
Like...
In our lifetime, yes, there will be a huge transitionary period, and it'll take a while. I think by the end of our lifetimes, the robots will do everything.
I actually, as I was saying what I was saying, I was recalling a picture of New York where it showed horses everywhere, and I'm almost positive
2 years later they were all gone.
2 years?
Yeah,
okay,
might have been 1 year. I've seen that picture. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was all Model Ts down the entire, no horses, like maybe like 2 or 3 horses, but majority cars. So that was a very quick transition.
Yeah, so that's that transition from horse and carriage to car. But people didn't lose their jobs because like Rick, the horseshoe maker lost his job, but instead of making horseshoes, he went and started making steel wheels for cars. And so that's what we've historically seen. What I think is so different about this is that this new technology repairs itself, fixes itself, services itself, gets smarter, and there's no need for human intervention. And so it'll either be we'll move on, but it'll either be the greatest thing to happen to humankind, where we will all then do exactly what you said is the most important thing. We'll raise our families, we'll travel, we'll live really good lives, we'll do things that excite us and inspire us, or it'll absolutely devastate the human race because we will be floating in the wind with... We'll all have good income. The government,
No, I would. Okay, so a couple things on that. Which one is that we saw what universal income does during COVID, where you just give people free money. It actually just is terrible.
Doesn't help. Makes worse.
The idea of people having these amazing, great lives of just traveling all the time. Human beings can only do that for so long before it literally destroys them as people.
Yep.
You need to create. You need to work. You just need to work, right? Even if it's the simplest work, you want to feel like you're contributing to something. And the less you contribute, the worse that feeling gets. So I know what you're saying. I think this is like the limit of my knowledge when it comes to this, right? And the rest of it is just sort of speculation. I don't know. I need more time to think about that. The idea of the jobs that people would end up doing are also being taken over by the
Yep.
robots, right?
Yep. That's the difference, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's interesting, and I guess we'll just see. I guess well, no one really knows, but we'll
yeah.
see.
See,
And what I think is interesting is that if you have your self purpose and you know what's important to you, and you're focused and dedicated and work hard, you'll just be fine, right?
well, and the thing is that there's a spectrum to all of this. So the other thing that you were saying is like maybe we'll all be happy and fulfilled in doing this, or maybe we will be completely crushed. And I think it's not an or thing, it's both. Some people will be fulfilled and some people will be crushed. And the people who are fulfilled maybe just had a better mindset and were able to figure things out. And the people who are crushed were crushed for a reason, but maybe they can, work through what's crushing them and be able to get to the brighter side of things, right? I mean,
Yep.
the only reason I had the mindset that I have now is because I've been crushed over and over again many times, and I had to like build up this resilience. And so and I'm sure you probably have similar stories of things you've gone through, and every single person who is resilient became resilient by going through the hard, right?
Yep.
I think that's like one of the most crucial things that people need in their lives, honestly.
I agree. Resiliency and adaptability are the two of the biggest things. Like
Yeah. Which
almost every day, it's something that gets thrown at you, and you could either fight it or you could say, okay, I got to adapt to this. I got to adjust. You got to take a moment, breathe it in, and go, gosh, my mind is telling me, no, this is something new. This is something different. This is not what I like. But then you got to say, okay, I got to find a way to adapt and adjust. And I think traveling is, we're both in the travel industry.
Yeah.
It absolutely sets you up for success for that, because no vacation plan is ever perfect.
No.
You got a delayed flight, you got a canceled Uber, you go down to see a concert and the artist doesn't show up. You show up to an Airbnb and the house sucks and it doesn't have all the stuff you're expecting it to.
Right.
And so you've really got to decide, hey, I could either let this change ruin my trip, but gosh, I only get a couple of these a year, or I could just roll with the punches and, okay, guys, we came to the beach, but it's pouring down rain. We've got to find something to do to have fun and to make some memories here. And I do think traveling gives you a lot of perspective on life and also helps you solve problems and be more of a happy person. So let me dive into exactly where we were going before we spun off on the kids, right?
I was going to say, let's bring this back to Airbnbs. I want to talk about backyards.
Yeah. So real quick. So where we very started was I flew into Europe and the plan was to stay at hostels and to couch surf. And
wanted to go, and then it cut you off. We went on a half an hour tangent.
And we went on a half an hour tangent.
Good memory.
But this is the best way to circle back in, which is we talked about how traveling keeps you adaptable and you got to stay resilient. Same thing with us. We realized quickly, hey, I'm like 25 years old at the time. I'm not 19 years old. And I'm like, all right, staying at a hostel is just not for me. Sleeping on a bunk bed in a room with 20 other people is just not going to work. And so what do we? Yeah, I'm not that guy anymore. No, I'm not 19. Me. So it was like, okay, let's go stay at hotels. And I was like, man, these hotels are all on the edge of town. We're in Europe. They're on the edge of town. They're in the hotel district. They're not close to the stuff. We don't have a car. We're walking everywhere. We don't have a kitchen for the food that's left over. This hotel sucks. What's next? Oh my gosh, I can rent a little apartment that has a washer and dryer and a kitchen and is dead in the heart of Rome. Like, this is so cool. So we fell in love with short-term rentals, Airbnbs. And when we came back to the States, it was just something that was on our mind. We enjoyed that experience and traveling through that channel and that avenue. And then we decided to be in the short-term rental space as super hosts ourselves, and me working for Showplace and then STR Cribs.
That is what you just explained right now. How do I word this better? I think that Airbnb is still finding its place in the industry of travel. I think that people are opening up Airbnbs all over the place and trying, right? And some are succeeding and some are failing. And the ones that are succeeding, they're succeeding for reasons, right? And obviously they're succeeding for reasons. But what I mean by that is if I were to go travel to a city, I'm staying in a hotel 99% of the time. right? I'm going to New York this weekend. I'm staying in a hotel. I didn't even look up Airbnbs because I'm not even remotely considering staying in an Airbnb in New York. I want a
Right.
room. I want to know exactly what I'm going to be getting. I want it to be well taken care of. I want it to be the person at the door. I want all those things. I'm traveling by myself. I'm going to be there for 2 nights, right?
Right.
Now,
If you
coming
were
from
traveling
somebody,
if you were traveling with your family, you might be thinking differently.
if I was traveling with, well, you, it depends on what you say by family. You're talking about my whole family. You're talking about me, Nicole, and Remy, right? So it's like,
You got, yeah.
that's what I
It
mean. So
depends.
that's kind of where I was going with this. Whereas if I were to be traveling with my entire family, right, which is my brothers and sisters and stuff like that, we're renting out like multiple Airbnbs because there's so many of us, and we will never ever stay in a hotel unless we absolutely have to, because
Yep.
we all want to be so close to each other as much as we possibly can. And so when I think about that scenario, it always just makes me think that Airbnb will always exist because people will always want that and need that. And the longer Airbnb is around, the more of those things are going to exist, right? Which are larger group stays for people. And I think it might even change the way that some of us travel, in the sense that traveling with multiple families will probably become so much more of a norm in comparison to just going with your own family, because you guys
Yep.
can all stay together, right? Now, mind you, I might be people have technically been doing that forever. So anyone who just heard that's probably like, what are you talking about? Right. But like, when I consider when I consider hanging out with my friends, we always think like, hey, let's all go rent a cottage. Let's all
Yep.
go rent it together and we can do that. Maybe that wasn't like an option as easily 20 years ago when Airbnb didn't exist, right? It was like, oh, we're all going to get a hotel. Anyways, I just what I'm trying to say is that I think Airbnb is finding its footing, and the way that you explained how the hotels were on the outskirts of the city, but this Airbnb was on the inside of the city, that's a scenario where the Airbnb makes way more logical sense than the hotel. So then therefore the Airbnb is going to win every single time. That's where Airbnb works. But then Airbnb on the outskirts of town, that it's a really shitty place in the basement of someone's Airbnb, and it looks dingy and nobody wants to go in there, and somebody just threw it up on Airbnb in hopes of making an extra couple bucks. That's where Airbnb is going to fail all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's why our two services are so powerful, right? Is
For
that
sure.
is that Airbnb is not going anywhere, but it is definitely changing from where it was 10 years
Yeah.
ago, where it was even 2 years ago. Like
Yeah.
2 years ago, if you got on social media, all you saw was the arbitrage guys telling you
Yeah.
to go out and arbitrage 20 houses, buy used furniture on the Facebook marketplace, get a
Yeah.
couple IKEA beds, throw them on the floor, and you were going to make so much cash flow you'd never have to go to work another day in your life, right?
Yeah.
Do you see any of those ads anymore? No. Why is that? Well, it's because the model that did work a couple years ago doesn't work anymore. And
Well, there's
so,
there's two factors to that, and I want to jump in. I apologize for cutting you off, but
no, you're fine.
as the fucking Airbnb data analyst over here, right? I study these cities. I look at these cities, and there's supply and demand. Okay, right? So, I think that the guys who were actually, well, I know some of these guys, right? That had been promoting these courses. I saw their books. Like I knew they were making money. But
Right?
then once you tell 1,000 people to go do the exact same thing, and they
Yep.
all are going to the same cities that allow regulations to actually be there, and then those people don't know the best buildings to be in, or they just think that it can go on the outskirts, and they've just been told it's so easy and it works, but they don't realize how much due diligence that person did to make sure it works. And then all of a sudden they're getting 10 units in an apartment building, and they're just like, yeah, I'm going to throw up 10 units. I go, like, what? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
what? And then you hear it from another 20 people,
Yep.
and then you're just going, how many more times can we repeat this before there's already a hotel supply, which is better, in my opinion, is better than the one bedrooms, right? These
Yep.
one bedroom Airbnbs, the hotels are
Yep.
better.
Yep.
Now,
Agreed.
not for everybody, but for the most part. So the hotels already got you beat. There's already a crazy amount of hotels, and now you're doing all you're getting 10 units in that building. And I don't know, man. I feel like this was like written on the wall, so easy to be able to see. There's only so many. There's a reason why there's not 40 hotels opening up in downtown Scottsdale, because they
Right.
know there's not the demand to be able to keep up with that supply. So then why would you convert 40 of those apartment buildings into rental arbitrage Airbnbs, right? So anyways,
Yeah.
I feel like you understand what I'm saying with that.
Definitely. The hotels are absolutely crushing the short-term rental one bedrooms. They just have the density, they have all the data,
They have
they're
the
more attractive.
consistency.
The
The
consistency. I like
consistency.
that.
Why does
I like that.
McDonald's crush it everywhere? Because if you buy a Big Mac on the West Coast compared to the East Coast, it's going to taste the exact same. You know
Yep.
what you're getting. That's why I book a hotel every single time. I get the consistency. I don't have to worry about if the door code's going to work or if I'm even legally allowed to be in this building,
Yep.
right?
Yep. I love that. And so then what's going to win in the short-term rental game, like you said, is appealing to the larger groups, having the unique stay that is not maybe tailored towards you traveling to New York City for 2 days, one night for a conference, and
Yeah.
then getting the heck out of there. It's you and your family or your friends going to the cabin in the woods for the bachelor party,
Right.
or going to the beach for 2 weeks for vacation. And
Yeah.
so that's really where people in the Airbnb short-term rental space are going to win, is with the unique properties that are set up to win against the other accommodations. You can't
Yes.
compete
And this
with
is
the Marriott
so
in
let's go.
one-bedroom accommodations.
Yes, and let's go deeper on this because anybody listening to this would also say all the other course sellers and people like us who are talking about the individual homes, those are also going to get overrun, right? And if you have all of these course sellers, like I know one guy who's got 2,500 students who are all going out there trying to buy Airbnbs. That's a
Yep.
lot, and they're all trying to build businesses. So they're not just trying to buy one, right?
Right.
So then therefore, uh, there's also going to be a crazy oversupply of homes, right? And then and I believe very strongly that those people are also going to get crushed, but for a different reason. So just like there's too many one bedroom units being supplied in the downtown areas, there are going to be too many 4 bedrooms being supplied in some of these markets as well. And that's just it's obvious, right? Eventually, there's so many Airbnbs opened up that the amount of people traveling in do not need those, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so then therefore, not everybody's going to get booked. And so this is why when we take on a client, we say you have to have at least $150,000. Because if you had less than that, and I try to guide you into a market, you're going to lose. You're going to lose in the long run. Okay. Maybe you win today because today's easy. I honestly think, and maybe a lot of other people don't think this, but I genuinely think right now it's a very easy time to make Airbnbs work if you understand the data. And even with the higher interest rates, even with the houses going up, if you know where to look, you know where to find them, you know how to put them together, it's easy to make it work. Right. And so maybe you can get in with a lower budget and still cash flow. But the problem, okay, is that Airbnb is still finding its footing. And we are seeing that more people just naturally are going to be wanting these bigger homes because they make more sense for the way that they travel in comparison to the smaller places. So then therefore more people will start opening up bigger places, right? So we're talking like 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, whatever it is. Even I've seen starting to see 8 bedrooms pop up, right? And so then the next evolution to this is that those larger homes start to stack more value over their competitors within that same market so that they win. Right? Are you following, right? So
Correct.
the way that people are going to be deciding where to go is going to be based off of which one of these homes now is going to provide more value to them. And whoever has more value is going to get booked and going to get booked at the higher rate. And then when everything comes crashing down, which is the time we hit that next recession, right? And that could be when Trump gets elected, because if he doesn't get elected, that would be something else. You know what I mean? After
Yep.
everything that just happened, like he's pretty well a shoo-in at this point.
Right.
Shit could go down. And that could
Yep.
lead to some sort of recession, and the stock market just dips by 40%, and all of a sudden there's this huge recession, right? And once we hit that
Yep.
recession, everything's going to go to shit when it comes to travel.
Yep.
And so then therefore, whoever has the better listing within that market is the one that's going to be able to still get booked, because there may be less people traveling, but there's still people traveling. And so then those people in those markets still get booked.
So how do you have the best listing in your market?
How do you exactly, right? And honestly, like, you need some money to be able to do that these days.
Yep. Yep.
I know that was a very long rant, but I'm trying to help people understand my logic on these Airbnbs and how they work and what I think is happening and how to actually win, because this is the strategy that we've been TechFester has been implementing for 2 years. It's not just about, hey, let's try and put a pickleball court in the backyard so that we make more money. It's the logic is, how do we create so much value that when almost nobody's traveling, we still get booked, we're still at least breaking even, and we can make it through the recession.
Yep.
That's what people don't understand. I feel like a lot of people are not thinking ahead. Do you know what I mean by that? Do you think when people are buying these Airbnbs, they're thinking about when we hit that next recession, how they're going to make it through?
No way.
So
No
rare,
way.
right? Even though that's the
But what,
one time where everyone's going to lose.
you know what, people aren't even thinking past the closing, John. Most of the folks that come to me, especially over the last couple of years, and especially at my time at Showplace, they put all their money into the down payment closing costs. They got to the closing table, they closed, and then it was 2 weeks post closing, and they came to us and said, "Hey, I got to get some furniture in this thing." And we went, "What? You didn't think about that? Oh yeah, I got to put it on a credit card. I got 10 grand to throw furniture in this house." And I'm like, "Dude, you didn't do any forward thinking. You didn't have any game plan. You didn't spend any time and energy figuring out what you needed to do to be successful. It's like opening a restaurant. You'd never open a restaurant without knowing your menu, who was going to cook the food, where the food was going to come from, how much you were going to price it, how are you going to get people in the
Right.
door. Like, this is a business. This is not,
Yes.
and people aren't thinking about it like that.
People are
Most
not.
people are not thinking about it like
I
that.
was talking about this yesterday with there's a long-term rental coach who I was talking to yesterday, and I told him he should put together a light version of how to buy real estate well, specifically targeted at Airbnb investors. Because the amount of Airbnb investors, and this is not everybody. So whoever's listening to this and they're like, that's not me. And I was like, okay, well, this is not you, right? But there are other people who are doing this where they have $100,000 saved up. They heard about Airbnbs. They thought it was a good idea. And they went out and said, they went to their lender and said, hey, how much could I get approved for? They go, you can buy a $500,000 home. They go, okay, sounds good. And they go and buy whatever $500,000 home in the market that they like without even doing any of the research prior to it. Do you even know if they're buying it overpriced, if it has a bunch of repairs that are needed, like what's going to happen if that goes down, if they're going to be able to cover the mortgage? And they just buy it because they're like, yeah, I'm going to turn it into an Airbnb and make a ton of money like everybody else.
Yep.
And it, dude, that right there genuinely hurts my heart, like hurts my soul. It's the reason why I built my entire business, because I'm trying to ensure nobody does that. But there's so many people I still see doing it, and I don't know what to do.
It hurts. Well, we do what we're doing right now, which is we got to put the information out there. We got to teach the people, tell them what we know.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
but it doesn't just hurt them, John. It hurts the industry as a whole, right? Because then they put out a subpar product into the market.
Yeah.
The guests come and have an average at best stay.
Right.
The property owner doesn't make any money on their investment. They spend a lot of time and energy. Stuff gets damaged because, hey, you're in the hospitality space. Shit's going to get broken. Shit's going to get damaged. It is what it is.
Yep.
And they're not prepared for it. They're soured. They're disappointed. They tell their friends and family, oh, this was a terrible investment. Don't invest in Airbnb. The guests are upset. It might be their first stay, and they say, God, this was a terrible house. I'm never staying at another short-term rental again.
Yeah.
It's just bad as a whole for everyone. And I'm a big fan of win-win situations.
Yeah.
And I think you're really good at helping people put themselves in the position for a win-win situation.
Yeah.
And it requires some cash. It requires some due diligence. It requires some energy, effort, time, experts in your corner. Like, you need to really be thoughtful about this. And a lot of people aren't doing that.
I agree. There are a ton of people who are trying to do it, but there are a bunch of people who are not, and it's just kind of drives me nuts. But I would even say some people who are trying, who are hiring the coaches and whatnot, are still not doing enough due diligence. But again, you're talking to the Airbnb data guy. Like, I do too much due diligence, but that over analysis has allowed me to not, buy an unprofitable property, which has been very helpful for everything that I've been doing. But I don't know, man. It just, kind of, I have this course I put out there. It's 40 hours long, teaches everybody every single last step. And it's worked without a doubt. And yet people don't go through it. And
could you make it an hour long? Is there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, if you want to fail, I can make it an hour long. I can give you the quick version, which is not going to give you the details to be able to make sure you're not making a mistake. Again, go through the freaking due diligence, but
that's the same with any industry, right, John? It's not just this industry.
I think the restaurant analogy was perfect, right? The restaurant analogy is because people don't see Airbnb as a business. They see Airbnb as a real estate investment. And real estate investments have traditionally been buy it, get somebody to put, a long-term tenant in there, call it a day, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the reality is that you're opening up a business, just like a restaurant, which is such a good way of explaining that. You have to know how to cook, right? Or at least be able to hire a cook. You know how to market,
Yeah,
how to put together a menu, how to actually understand that certain types of seating goes into certain types of restaurants, depending on what you want to be able to do. And
definitely.
like, imagine not knowing all that stuff and going up to a building owner and being like, hey, I'm going to sign a 3-year lease on this building because I want to turn it into a restaurant. And then you have that for 2 weeks, and then you finally go, I got to figure out what I'm going to do here, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
maybe I should, what am I going to cook here?
Yeah.
Like, it's,
What
anyway.
I just googled it. The National Association of Restaurants estimated an 80% failure within the first 5 years, a 60% failure within the first 3 years. So
I wonder how high the failure rate is in Airbnbs for a similar reason. I wonder. I always, man, I say this all the time. Hold on. What I mean is that there's a ton of times where I have seen people show me their listing, and I'll know the market. I'll know the market like the back of my hand. And I know that the property that they either just purchased or rented is never going to cash flow.
yep.
I know within seconds that it's not going to work. And no matter how many times I try to tell them, they don't get it. Right. And even if they did use STR cribs to create an unbelievable backyard or an unbelievable interior, they bought it in the wrong place to begin with for the wrong price. And they are going to fail without a doubt. Right.
It's the restaurant. It's back to the restaurant. You can have a great menu and a great product and da 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 da. But if you're in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, an hour out of town, are you going to have the foot traffic and the people? No. So it's a combination of both. It's a combination of you guys making sure that they have the right asset in the right area, in the right neighborhood, on the right street, with everything, right? There's so much nuance to this. Are you in the perfect location? And then are you putting out a great product that people want, that they'll come back for, that they'll pay top dollar for?
Yeah.
And it's tough, man. It's not easy. And I think that I am a little disappointed that people are not taking your course, because they should. Like, if you're going to get into this, you should take John's course.
That's a whole other scenario. I mean, I want to talk a little bit more about what STR Cribs actually does, because I feel like a lot of people don't actually grasp what you guys do. But I believe I can share my screen, so I'm just going to share my screen and show off one of these listings that I think this listing is just unbelievably beautiful. I'm going to open up a couple actually, because this is the the properties that have been spitting out.
We've done some good work this year.
So beautiful, man. They're just so beautiful. I can't get over it. This one here is insane. Like, this backyard. Yeah. So I think this is something that we've been trying to perfect for a very long time. There was a point in time where I was trying to like help guide how this should all be put together. And then it got to the point where I knew that I wasn't the person to do it. And instead it was more of me just saying, hey, we need these amenities, figure out how to make it all work. Right.
Yep.
And so here, obviously, we have the basketball and we have the pickleball, over to the fire pit and over to the mini putt. Now, what I want to point out here, because I noticed this when I started to really like look into it, and I was trying to understand, why does this one look so beautiful in the way it's put together? And if you were to compare it to, let's say, one over here, there's one specifically that I want to pull up that I am not a fan of. I think it's actually a bit of a mistake. Oh, it's not even showing up right now. Give me 1 second. Yeah, this one here. So this one here, okay? If you compare this one to this one here feels perfect, right? This one here feels cluttered and cheap in a way. Not necessarily cheap, but just cluttered.
Yep.
And I think the backyard layout needs to perfectly flow together, even just for this shot. And
right.
What I noticed with this one is that the pickleball court quite literally goes into where this would normally be, right? It goes into the mini putt. That like it takes out this corner and takes it over. And then I also noticed that the fire pit actually kind of goes in here, and this has to wrap around that fire pit in the way that it's put together. And when I noticed how well these sort of flow into one another, I'm like, that's beautiful. Like, it genuinely is so beautiful, because it looks so good, and it's all built around each other. I don't really know where I'm trying to go with this, but I just think it's perfectly put together. You know what I mean?
It's very aesthetically pleasing.
Yes.
And remember, people book with their eyes. And so I think that's
Yes.
really a great takeaway from this is that no one is going to read the title to your house. No one is going to read the 6 pages of instructions and property layouts. I'm a big believer that people are not readers and they're going to look at the pictures. They're
So
going to look at your hero
I got a
shot.
book. I got a book back here that contradicts that. It's a little book, but it talks about how some people are readers and some people are audio learners. So you either learn from reading or you learn from listening. And you've got to know yourself. Myself, I'm a listener. You say something to me, I'm going to hear it, it's going to make sense to me. If I start reading it, it's not going to make as much sense to me, right? So I would say that there's going to be a ton of people who are just going to look at the photos and be like, this is going to be listing for me. There's going to be a ton of other people that are going to look at the photos, but they're also going to read the description. So you do have to have both them matched up, but the photos say way more than the description will ever say, right?
Well, it's like a dating profile, right? There's a reason that
Yeah.
people put so much energy and emphasis. I bet you if you threw up the same description of a man, I'm 6'2", 200 pounds, da 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 da. I work for Google and make 780,000 a year. Da, da, like you could make the description unbelievable, but if the guy's picture, he's way overweight or they're terrible pictures or whatever, he doesn't look good in the photos. That profile is not going to get nearly as much attention as a profile of good, nice photos. The guy's got a great smile. Da 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 da. That's going to do so much better. I think it's the same analogy in vacation stays. I think that it's an emotional reaction that people are booking properties based upon an emotion because traveling and vacation is very emotional for people. It's not analytical. I'm not.
Yes.
It's like buying a car, right? You would think that people buy cars based upon research and miles per hour and safety ratings and da 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 da.
Yeah.
That's not true, man. All the statistics show that people buy cars on emotion, and I think that picking your Airbnb is the same thing. And so that's why those photos are so important.
I drive a truck because I'm a man.
Right.
I'm not,
right.
I'm not because a car.
Right. You didn't read the description. You didn't read the pages and pages of books of information on your truck before you bought it. You looked at it. You said, I like that color. I like the way it sits, man. I could see myself driving it. People do the same thing with vacation rentals. They look at the photos and say, I can see the kids playing on the playground, me laying in that hammock by the pool, watching movies on this couch in this living room, and they book the house.
So this is what I've been saying this since my properties in Chicago when I did this crazy amount of research one day on my properties. Pete, you want to get your guest to emotionally connect to your listing subconsciously.
Yep.
So when somebody is going through all the different listings, they are going to connect with some of them for some reason. Okay. They don't know why, but they're like, this one I like a lot more. And they're likely going to have like 3 of them that they kind of narrow it down. Like these are our final 3, right? Nobody ever just picks one and calls it a day. They always have to like look at every single one, make sure they're getting the absolute best one for them. But then once they have those final 3, they're going to say to themselves, I want this one for some reason. And I don't know why, but I want this one. I want this one more. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more for it. I want it. Right. And this is where design and amenities comes so much into play. Because if you can get the person to emotionally connect, you've already won. And I strongly believe that one of the fastest and easiest and smartest ways to be able to do this, and cheapest, is through color psychology. Simply understanding what colors are going to be attracting your ideal demographic. That's why when people are creating these bachelorette homes, they're going pink everywhere, right? But what about the families that are going to be traveling? What are the colors that are going to matter more for them in comparison to anybody else? And just by using colors, that's the subconscious that's telling them they want that place, right? They don't know why, but they want it. Now, maybe all of the amenities also make logical sense for them. It's a whole bunch of guys going to Scottsdale and they see that this backyard has all the amenities for them, and there's no jungle gym because the jungle gym's for kids, right? So like, well, of course I'm not going to stay there, right? Or the rooms have been specifically designed to be stepbrother rooms, and they're like, well, of course I'm going to stay there. That's going to be the best place to stay, right? Like, that's where we're going. And so that is the level of strategy that if you apply to your listing allows you to just outcompete everybody and allows you to be in that top 10 percentile. And I know this for a fact because TechVestor is in the top 10 percentile of every single market they're in, for every single category they're in with their properties. Therefore, there is a formula that works. And if you market to everybody, you market to nobody, right?
Right.
So who's the best person to market towards? And that's where demographic research comes into play. This is probably something you actually don't know, but we're actually working on an AI demographic tool right now that we're likely going to give away for free to the Airbnb community, which is going to be unreal. Pop in your listing. It's going to tell you who's your best demographic. Pop in your address. It's going to say, this is the demographic you should be focusing on based on the top performing properties within this market. Here's the color psychology behind that demographic. Here are like top amenities behind that demographic. It's not going to be done for a while, but I'm just teasing that out real quick.
That's going to be sick, man. That's going to be worth gold because people are always wondering, like, who is traveling to my area? And there's obviously some information you can gather online if you do some research, but every market's a little bit different. There's certain people going to Scottsdale for certain reasons. There's certain people going to Nashville.
Everyone freaking knows we're in Scottsdale at this point, and Scottsdale is extremely hard to navigate, so I don't even care. But we have 3 different demographics that we hit in Scottsdale, depending on the size of the home, the location of the home, and other factors too, what I can't get into. But there's multiple demographics all in one specific area. You just have to know which property appeals to them, why.
Right, but think about this, John. We were just talking just a little bit ago about the fact that even just furniture itself is an afterthought for some people. And you said
Right.
they just buy the house that meets their budget in the market that they think they're interested in. And here we are talking about the psychology of the color palettes and whether you paint the basketball court teal blue or baby blue. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like so we've gotten so granular in our process
Right.
and so detail oriented and thought about so many things about who's traveling to this area, what neighborhood are they looking to stay in, how many people are coming, what is the age of the people that are coming. Like we think about all these things to put together this beautiful product that's going to perform really, really well. And that is why what we're doing is winning.
That's why you win.
And that's why McDonald's wins. Because why does McDonald's kick Burger King's ass? Do they make a better cheeseburger? I don't know. I don't like either of them. Probably not. But they have thought they thought their location so far through that they know that their colors are the best colors. They're going to be on the right corner that has the traffic, that has the entrance from the north, entrance from the south. They're not discriminating against anybody. They have the 2-lane drive-through so that you don't see the drive-through around the corner and say, I don't want to go there because it's going to take too long to get my food.
Right.
You think I can pull up and order my food, even though you're going to wait the same exact amount of time. They're playing on the psychology and they've mastered it. And that's why they're crushing everyone else in the burger game. Yep. And it's that mindset and that amount of due diligence works in every single market. It's just a different set of data that you need to analyze. And you've mastered analyzing that data for vacation rentals.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You need to go to this deep of understanding to win. Whether you're opening up a restaurant, like I was saying earlier, I found out that there was a different type of chair for a different type of restaurant. I didn't know that was a thing. When I learned that, I actually got excited. I was like, that is such a cool data point. You know what I mean? Like, what are the odds of that? And there's a really good reason behind those types of chairs. And it's like when you go that deep in any industry, you're going to win, right? And so we're just trying to win. And you want, like, people who say you shouldn't, I don't even know. You know what? I was just going to say something I don't even want to say because there's some people who are so against like doing everything you can to possibly win because you're going to crush all your competitors. And we're in business. We're trying to provide the best possible value to our clients. And if you don't provide a better value in comparison to somebody else is going to do it and is going to crush you. So always try to outdo your competitors so you win in the long run. That's all that matters.
This is the transition we talked about and how the industry is changing. And the reason that people think like that is because Airbnb posted their data. 98% of all listings are single owner listings, right? Mm-hmm. The overwhelming majority of properties on the platform are owned by mom and pop who have one listing. And the origin story where this all started was with people, just nice people renting out the spare bedroom in their house. These were not business minded people who were thinking about, I'm making this my business. I need to track ROI, maintenance, all the stuff, right? This was Grandma Sue who said, I got the spare bedroom and I could get $25 a night and meet nice young people from all around the world. That's where it started, right?
Yeah.
And so those roots are still seated deeply into the industry, and most people are still thinking like that.
Yeah.
But it's changing. The winds of change have shifted, and the Techvestors of the world and the Overmoons and the Marriotts and the Hiltons, they're coming into this space saying, hey, that's great that Susie likes to rent out her spare bedroom for $25 a night. I don't care about that. I'm running a business and I'm going to use the data, the numbers, the facts. And people might not like that, but that's what their competition is. And if you don't adapt, we talked about this earlier in the thing, if you don't adapt and adjust and be resilient, you're going to be pushed out of the space, because that's not going to work in the near future.
Couldn't agree more, man. I think we end right there. I do have to hop to my next call. That was beautifully said.
Yeah.
I love this, man. This was so much fun. I wish I scheduled more time to talk, because like we could keep going.
This was a blast, dude. I love
know
it.
I have so much more I want to talk about, but man, appreciate you. Well, obviously
always fun to talk. Always fun to talk to you, John. Thanks for getting together with me, man. This was a blast. I think we added a bunch of value out there, and we should definitely spin it back and do it again.
Yeah, and if you guys made it to the end, leave us a comment. Let me know if you want to keep this going. Do you want to have Mark back on? You want us to keep going? Let me know. Let us know. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. See ya.
See ya.